Sleep Token's new song, Caramel, is an ode to the toxic fan base that we've become. You sit down, you open the box, and a little ballerina comes out. But that ballerina actually looks like Vessel in one of his funky little outfits. That's the vibe that the very introduction of this song gave me. The beginning of this song very much gives this tone or vibe of serenity, focusing specifically from the music box-like tones or chimes that are, permeating through the beginning of the song, alongside the very soft melodic vocals coming from Vessel. The start of the song actually reminds me of Rain. I feel like they have kind of similar structures to the introduction of the song, but it's kind of the same in the sense of very soft, kind of swooning melodic vocals coming in. The complexity of the song starts simply. It's baseline here, and I could even see it being compared to the progression of the band's life cycle thus far. However, and rather quickly, we see a drastic shift, and this song is very much focusing on the sudden and drastic shifts. We see this contrast immediately being introduced with a reggaeton beat. Personally, I wasn't calling it a reggae-esque beat. Initially, I was saying that this was giving me Netflix series Edit on the Beach and Coconut Mall vibes, which technically it is actually a reggaeton beat, but I kind of digress on that point. Thanks, Greg, for pointing that out. Let's just highlight how untechnical I am regarding music. Now, after this very summery beat was introduced to the song, we still hear the music box keys from the beginning. And those are in a much more almost melancholic, nostalgic, sadder tone. And it's contrasting with this very bright, summery, buns out on the beach, which we would kind of see from the stereotype sex metal title that Sleep Token's taken on. Not only that, but the very faux presentation of positivity that we hear in the tone of Vessel's vocals, because looking at the lyrics as actual lyrics, he's talking about some pretty, bummer shit. And it's presented in a way this is an upbeat summer bop, which is the immediate impression that I got when I first listened to this song, especially at this specific point in the song. Then the drum beat comes in, and it's technical and is all complicated as ever, because let's be so for real right now, 2 pops off whenever he gets on a song. But you come to almost an impasse when you're listening to the song at this point. You're thinking that this song is going to be some kind of upbeat, lovey-dovey, welcome to the summer bop, basically. But that all changes when you hit the 3-minute and 25-second mark. And I mean, like that. It changes so quickly. And let's be so for real, when I was listening to this and did the premiere and watched it, I lost my marbles when we got to this point of the song. The sudden shift from the very upbeat and positive vocals and, general beat that we saw from the first 3 minutes of the song, shifting into quite literally blast beats. This pivot in the song throws in my favorite aspects vocally from the song Vor, and I could not be more happy to see it. I've seen multiple commentators also discuss the fact that the screams in this song are not the, standard deathcore or metalcore screams, or just not standard to Sleep Token in general, but I'd argue that these are quite literally the same screams that we know and love from Sleep Token. You listen to Vor and you listen to this song, and yeah, there is some difference in tone, but it's still the kind of ambient, doomy screams that Vessel has been doing for a hot minute. And this is where I think a lot of people get the hiccup, is because they're expecting from this band like a shrieky, deathcore, almost a Bad Omens-y scream. Sleep Token's use of the heavier vocals is much more akin to like a doomy black metal band or like an ambient doom band. It's that very lingering and low-toned scream that kind of permeates and festers in the background of the song. Not to mention, it's also supported by blast beats coming out of left field and then just thrashing everything during the song. I mean, I listened to it and I was like, whoa, where'd those come from? But it's so good. It's a violent, sudden pivot. That's not to say that this song has fully abandoned any semblance to what it was in the beginning, because we see that as the song winds down and comes to the end, it leaves you in a space very similar or akin to where you started. You still have the overlaid vocals, you have the music box chimes, and kind of the beat still happening in the background as you fade in and out from the heavier vocals, but it doesn't ditch the theme. It's still there. It's just underneath some layers. Sleep Token is a band that I feel I could pretty confidently say has seen unprecedented and unseen growth for a band of their make and model before. And this heavily relies on the fact that they're presenting themselves as anonymous vessels to the art that they are creating. In the age that we live in, it's almost as though we feel like we have a direct right to have a easy, accessible line of information to the people we consume content from. This specifically is a particularly painful point for the Sleep Token fan base. You have the development of these parasocial relationships with the fan to musician dynamic, especially with the added layers of the anonymity and the secrecy hidden behind who's behind the mask. Not to mention that this dynamic has only been worsened by social media. I don't typically dive into the lyrics of a song, however, with much urging from the people that love Sleep Token or just do music reviews in general, I have taken a look at it, and I have to say, with my interpretation of what these lyrics mean in this song, it's kind of heartbreaking, and it was almost difficult to write through. I'm not going to say that this broke me or emotionally devastated me, but seeing the perspective presented like this in such a direct way, there really isn't many ways you can interpret this that are different in my mind.
I'd be thinking that I can't die in this, but dude.
Let's go through the lyrics, but as a little side note, I'm not going through all of them. I've specifically annotated the ones that I wanted to talk about. If you want to see the full list of lyrics, just look it up on Genius. They have all of the lyrics there and you can read through them. Wear me out like Prada, devil in my detail. I swear it's getting harder even to just exhale. Backed up into corners, bitter in the lens. I'm sick of trying to hide it every time they take mine. Right off the bat, I got anxiety vibes from this. Specifically, I'd like to say that this anxiety is probably derived from the fame and sudden spotlight that they'd been thrust upon as a band as a whole, but this can also come from so many different spaces. But I think a recurring thing that I'm going to be looking at this as is the recurring thought of the constant accessibility of your person to your fans. Being backed into a corner is almost a very animalistic fight or flight response. You get backed into a corner, you are going to lash out. And the statement, backed into a corner, I'd almost consider it being pushed into a corner regarding the maintenance of the anonymity of the band. And then almost this regret or disgust over the fact that you harbor bitterness towards the fact that there is so much presence demanded from you. That your fans want to see you so badly that they're stepping over these, very firm boundaries and then feeling conflicted regarding the bitterness that you harbor towards them. They ask me, is it going good in the garden? I say, I'm lost, but I beg no pardon. Up on the dice, but low on the cards. I try not to talk about how it's harder now. Can I get a mirror side stage? Looking sideways at my own visage, getting worse every time they try to shout my real name just to get a rise from me acting like I'm never stressed out by the hearsay. I guess that's what I get for trying to hide in the limelight. Guess that's what I get for having 20/20 hindsight. Everybody wants eyes on them. I just want to hear you sing that top line. Now, I did highlight that entire vocal segment. I didn't cut anything out of it. They ask me, is it going good in the garden? I feel is a very direct example of their fame. They've suddenly been pushed into this big boys club of super famous stadium selling out bands. Reaching the level of infamy they have achieved, thrusting them into this space that has basically been placed onto this pedestal or regarded as a holy land in the concept or mind space of musicians and fan bases, is like the Garden of Eden. Almost like there was an entire album about Eden. But I could just be looking too far into it. But regardless of if your presence in this holy space was wanted, you still feel lost. Not understanding how to truly navigate this new land that you've idolized and are now dumped into, that is kind of what I'm pulling from that starting segment. Now, this separation, I feel like, stems from the difference of the artist and the presenting musicians. You know, the fame is claimed by these figureheads of Sleep Token, basically the visage created to protect the anonymity of the artists behind the masks. But now there's almost a separation, and obviously some kind of bitterness, anger, or even guilt to the characters created to protect the artist. Not to mention the general disregard and general respect for the choice to remain anonymous by the band. It's quoted in the lyrics, every time they try to shout my real name just to get a rise out of me, acting like I'm never stressed out by the hearsay. As if that's not a devastating thing to see written into the lyrics of the song. I spoke with some others, and hearing how it's commonplace for people to scream the artist's real names during a live show, to me that is a disgusting overstep of the relationship that fans and musicians have. We aren't entitled to the personal lives or information or accessibility of their person just because we enjoy the content that they create. The push from this band to remain anonymous, and then the subsequent push back from the fan base as to not be anonymous, is the exact contradiction I'd like to highlight that kind of emphasizes what they are saying in these lyrics. And if you don't think I mean it, then understand, but I'm still glad you came, so let me see those hands. The request to be anonymous, or fans not understanding why you wouldn't want to be presented to the world to take claim to the fame that your band has gotten, so let me see those hands, is very much giving live show to me. You know, when you go to a live show, it's commonplace to hear the artist call out to the crowd and, say something along the lines of, let me see those hands. I see this as a direct commentary of the fan base not understanding the struggles, or at least not caring, but the artists still having to be grateful of their presence at the shows because, fundamentally, they're still a fan. Too young to get bitter over it all, too old to retaliate like before, too blessed to be caught ungrateful, I know, so I'll keep dancing along to the rhythm. This stage is a prison, a beautiful nightmare, too young to get bitter over it all, a war of attrition, I'll take what I'm given, too old to retaliate like before. The deepest incisions, I thought I got better, too blessed to be caught ungrateful, I know, but maybe I didn't. This is basically an echoing of the earlier thoughts in the song, basically being caught in this gilded cage that is the fame that you have worked so hard to obtain, and then realizing that you've backed yourself into a corner because of your anonymity and trying to find the balance of respect from your fan base and being able to enjoy the art that you've created. This push and pull of fan and creator, specifically the creators not being able to retaliate against their fan base when they are so blatantly wronged. I wish it all away, terrified to answer my front door. I separated this into its own line for its own discussion because I don't think it needs more elaboration or discussion because the simple words, terrified to answer my own front door, is enough. And that's all I'm going to say on that. So I'll keep dancing along to the rhythm. This stage is a prison, a beautiful nightmare, a war of attrition, I'll take what I'm given. Now, attrition, by definition, is the shrinking or like the atrophy of a group of people, whether it be a fan base, a workforce, or in my interpretation of this, I think the inner circle and friendships of the artists. While yes, anonymity can be freeing, it can also be very isolating. A beautiful nightmare, directly quoted from the lyrics, the statement that continuing to dance along to the own rhythm gives carrying on simply to carry on. Overall, my personal opinion on the song goes a little something like this. Up until about the 2-minute mark, I found this song a little bit hard to listen to, and that's me being for real. I'm saying this as my standard process when I'm introducing a new song to like the lineup or something that I'm getting ready to review. I listen to it in multiple different ways. I listen to it with headphones on, I listen to it playing out loud on a speaker, and more specifically, I listen to it while driving. I funnel it into my playlist somewhere, and then I think about how I reacted to how that song came up. When this song came up on my, dashboard when I'm driving and I'm not explicitly thinking about what's playing, I hovered my thumb over to push the button to skip it. I just didn't dig the first 2 minutes. It was almost a little too slow for me. Now, this is also coming from me, who doesn't like the fruitier, fluffier songs of Sleep Token. My favorite song by Sleep Token is Vor. That's just it. Being so for real. Like, the first 2 minutes almost lost me. But the more I listen to this song, the more it grows on me. It's very much giving the same process that I had when I listened to Emergence for the first time versus now. It definitely had a growing process where for the first 10, 20 times you listen to the song, there's probably going to be some new aspect that you're like, oh, that's kind of new that I didn't recognize that from the last few times I've listened to it. Now, I don't want to give the song a numerical rating yet because it continues to grow on me, and I find myself looking back at initial reviews of songs and almost regretting them because I don't feel like it was a full encompassment of what the song meant. Especially because it's going to change the perspective of the song when it is presented in album form, where I'm able to listen to the whole of it and see how it is staged between different songs and what it looks like in a broader spectrum. I've been trying to think of an analogy in my mind to give a good wrap up for final thoughts, specifically on how this song registers in my mind, and I feel as though this is kind of the most solid that I've come up with on how I would explain this song on a more emotional level or doing my high school book report level. To me, this song is quite literally like an attempt to make caramel. If you've ever tried to make caramel in a pan, you know how suddenly and almost violently the sugar can become because of the heat. And while I don't want to feel like I'm in high school writing an overly deep extrapolation of meaning in a book report, I feel like I can pretty comfortably make this connection here. This song presents itself almost as if it is an emotional state. The serenity quickly becoming overwhelmed, bubbling over and very suddenly becoming violent. Making a mess and burning anybody that gets close enough to touch it, and then cutting the heat when you realize I'm burning it, and it stopping the simmering, but it's still having that immense heat festering underneath the surface. This song has been a very interesting little project to dive into. I don't typically do direct reviews of lyrics within a song, but after reviewing the lyrics, I can't help but feel almost a little bit of guilt. As somebody a part of their self-declared fan base, seeing the very direct message being sent in this song about the overstep and basically the anxieties and stresses that have been forced upon the band because of our own obsession and forced parasocial relationship with the dude in a mask. The violent and sudden explosion of growth that this band has seen is a blessing and a curse. The entitlement that fan bases have regarding the feeling that they have the right to own knowledge regarding the people that make the content they consume, and the push and pull of trying to separate the artist from the art, and the artist becoming some kind of commodity for the art that is consumed. I hope you guys enjoyed my review, overview, whatever you want to call it, of Caramel by Sleep Token. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you guys next time.